Hi, welcome back to Watch Me, where we are proving them wrong one success story at a time. I am your host, Emily Galindo. I'm super excited to have you today because I have a very special guest that I'm thrilled to introduce you to, mostly because it's a topic that I'm very passionate about that controls literally the entire trajectory of your life, and that is leadership. So whether you want to be a better leader in your career, in your as a boss, or even leading your family, you are in the right place today. And so we are excited to have Sean Barnes with us, a leadership development expert, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and podcast lifestyle expert in all things leadership. So welcome, Sean, to our podcast.
Emily, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I am pumped to get into this conversation with you.
I am as well. So I always like to ask every guest, if people are just tuning in and you only get to impact one person, what is the one thing that you want them to know?
You know, life is extremely challenging for everyone. Nobody is immune to experiencing adversity and challenges in life. And the most important thing that I have come to realize throughout all the ups and downs of my life is how important it is to find that silver lining and relentlessly focus on that. Doesn't matter what issue you're facing, what challenge you are dealing with, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And then keep moving forward.
That is an incredibly powerful thing to be able to do. And I love that. I think it's an incredible answer because it requires you to do just literally one thing, which is to look at yourself. And that is a powerful step that not a lot of people are willing to do.
No, because it's not easy. It's so easy for us to point the blame at everybody else instead of turning the mirror and asking, how am I contributing to this? What can I do differently? Because we are the result of all of our own decisions in life. Whatever you're experiencing, that company that you hate working for, that boss that you hate, you are the one that is choosing to stay there. If you want to leave, that is a difficult decision to make and not easy, but you have the power to choose what you want to do, but it's all up to you.
And that is what you do. Is that the kind of the focus of WSS and the Way of the Wolf? So tell me a little bit about WSS.
Yeah, so whenever I left my corporate job, I had this vision that I wanted to positively impact people's lives and change the world through leadership, because I think leadership is a very powerful tool for us to kind of positively impact people's lives, and it has this ripple effect, because if you become a stronger leader in business and in your personal life and can positively impact the lives of others, they can then positively impact the lives of even more.
Yeah, the butterfly effect.
Exactly. And I thought, okay, how do I do this through a few different mediums? And one is WSS Solutions, our coaching and consulting business. The other is the Way of the Wolf, where we do podcasts, public speaking events, and things like this with the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is free. Share all the lessons that I have learned in leadership. And then if you want to work directly with me or our incredible team, then you can do that through WSS. So we have a few mediums to be able to positively impact more people's lives and businesses. So that's kind of the vision behind both.
Okay, and how did you find leadership? I think that we all kind of have our own journey of how we got here. How did you walk into that and go, oh, this is something I'm good at. This is something that makes a big impact.
I'd say for the first 15 years of my professional career, I got fed up with undeveloped leaders. I think I PC'd that up the best way I possibly could. Yeah. But I didn't know how to successfully lead myself or lead the people on my team. And so it was this iterative process over time where I would say, okay, I really like his leadership style. And early on, I would try to emulate the leadership style of somebody else. A mentor of mine, his name is Stacy Rocca. But I quickly realized I am not Stacy Rocca. I am Sean Barnes.
Yep.
I couldn't pull on the life experiences he had. I could only pull on the life experiences I had. So then I had to understand that I can pick and choose leadership traits from certain individuals and incorporate them into Sean's leadership style. And as I started to do that more and more, I started to see the power that we all have within us to inspire and influence and build other leaders across our teams. And ultimately, I am a firm believer in servant leadership. Pour into the people on your team, support them, help them level up. And when you do, all ships will rise with the tide. Mm-hmm. The real turning point for me, because I spent most of my life as an introverted IT guy, was 8 years ago, starting to lead human resources. It kind of broke my brain for a year, going from logic, data, numbers to all emotion all the time.
Right.
But it was exactly what I needed. And once I started to better understand the drivers and motivations of people, and then understanding how to align those with the needs of the business, that's when the magic happened. And that was a major turning point for me. And when I discovered I had this passion and purpose around leadership development and coaching.
Gotcha. Yeah, I and outside sales was mine, so it was just independent contributor type stuff, right? And I never wanted to go into management because I didn't want other people responsible for my income, right? And dependent upon, at the time, my perspective was stupid people to mess with that, right? And I eventually got an opportunity to step into that, had a mentor. I think that's probably key for a lot of people, is having somebody who has something that you want, right? Like at least an example, that piece that you're like, ooh, that's impacting me. I would like some of that. Anyways, I had somebody who taught me how to do it. Gina Harold was her name. And be able to impact others. And you're like, oh, wow, I can actually get really great results from people if you just pour into them, care about them. I think another key aspect is getting in the trenches with them and doing the work. You're not just like what we like to call an armchair manager, that you actually can do the job that you're asking me to do. So
that's one of the things that I've also learned, because whenever I was in technology, I was the highest performing individual contributor. I know, egomaniac over here. But
it's okay if it's factually based, right? Like, I mean, I'm here for that too. Yeah.
Here for the facts.
Yeah.
But what I started to recognize is that some of the best leaders were incredible individual contributors, but they didn't quite know how to build others up on the team. Mm-hmm. And I was actually just having a conversation the other day with a gentleman who's in a sales role and he's aspiring to step into a sales leadership role. Mm-hmm. And I said, think about it this way. If you close 10 accounts every single month, and then the people on your team are only closing 3 accounts, when you step into that leadership role, you likely are going to close fewer accounts, so maybe you're only closing 8. But if you build up the rest of the sales team and they're all closing 5 or 6 a month, all of a sudden you have become a force multiplier for the team itself. And that's what leadership is about.
Right. And unfortunately, not to get off on a tangent, but for those independent contributors that are the highest performers, sometimes we aren't offered the leadership role because we the company can't afford to pull you out of the field and take that hit. And so I feel like it's really unfair, quite frankly, that they don't get an opportunity to do that, to multiply themselves. And it's very short-sighted from a corporation standpoint to have that perspective. You'll take a hit for like 3 months, but give them some time to develop the others.
Yeah.
From a corporate coaching perspective, am I wrong about that, or is that what you would ask them to do?
No, not wrong at all. And I think part of the challenge here is you see undeveloped leaders at the upper echelons of organizations.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to do what you just described. The risk in their mind is, okay, well, if I take Emily and have her now start leading these other members of the team, what if she's not able to become that force multiplier in the first 3 months and my numbers take a hit? And oh, by the way, as the most senior leader, I don't know how to coach Emily to coach the people on the team.
Right.
So that kind of plays into the ego conversation of, you know what, it's fine the way it is. We'll just let it keep going. We'll just let Emily keep crushing it. But that's not how you scale. You have to invest in developing the people on your team. And when you do, you tap into such an incredible amount of discretionary effort that you just don't get from cracking the whip.
Right. I read a fascinating statistic the other day in terms of your field, right, which is corporate development, middle management, and the importance that it can play. If you can actually develop middle management to do exactly what you just described, you can increase revenue production by 38%. 38% we can increase revenue by just developing middle management people.
Yeah. Not shocking to hear that at all. I wasn't aware of the statistic, but it is not shocking to hear that at all. Because, again, you see these people, especially in the middle management tiers of organizations, they were the highest performing individual contributor, so they end up getting promoted into a manager role. But in order to lead people, it requires a different skill set than it does to be the highest individual contributor. You have to better understand effective communication and delegation and accountability. And these are soft skills that organizations, they don't really put a lot of emphasis on because it's challenging to quantify the impact of said soft skills. If you know what metrics to look for, you can quantify the impact of leadership development, of coaching. But most organizations, they're not familiar enough with the concepts to tie the hard numbers for the ROI that the CFO wants to see.
Right, and you and I both know, because the other follow-up statistic to that is 76% of your turnover was surveyed saying that the reason they left was middle management.
Again, not shocking to hear. And, I work with so many different organizations, and the amount of frustration that they express to me of turnover, because it's a very real issue. I mean, It's like a revolving door. A lot of these companies, we just can't keep our talent. Well, what are you doing to invest in them? Well, we're paying them a lot. Okay, but are you developing them? Are you creating opportunities for career progression? Are you mapping that out for them so that they know what the future holds? And when you do that at the most senior leadership levels, and then it permeates down through the organization, that's how you build a business that can consistently deliver time and time again and can scale, and you minimize the risk of losing all that tacit knowledge that leaves the organization when they're frustrated from not being developed.
Right. And the question that they asked them, or the response from those surveyed, said that all it would have required was for their middle manager to ask them one question, which is, what can I do to make your job better? Mm-hmm. That was it.
Yeah.
And I've known this since I was a server. Like, I just wish the owner of the organization would come to the people, the feet on the street, the people who are actually doing the job, and ask us, what do you think we should do? If you would just ask the people who are doing the job, you'll get some pretty amazing answers that can help.
One of the most viral pieces of content that I created, the heading was, maybe you should actually listen to your employees.
Oh, yes, I remember that one.
And, it's just, I think the reason it went so viral is because it is a frustration that everybody experiences.
Yeah.
And the thing that I can't help but wonder is all of these people that are so frustrated with leadership not listening to them, inevitably or presumably at some point find themselves in more of a senior leadership role. Are they investing in the people beneath them? Are they asking the people beneath them? And so I haven't been able to connect the dots on that just yet, but that's something that I'm kind of teasing out and working through. Another thing that I like to actually challenge those in middle management is, have you had the conversation with your boss of, is there something that I could do better? How can I better support you? And that gets into the realm of leading up the chain of command, which is arguably one of the most challenging aspects of leadership, is having to lead your boss.
Yeah.
This goes back into ego. It's like, well, he's my boss. I shouldn't have to lead him. I shouldn't have to coach him.
Or my personal favorite, I'm not getting paid to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But it's true. Leading, that goes back to ownership and self-accountability and self-reflection of, like, who do I want to be in this relationship? Or whether it's the relationship, personal, professional, it doesn't matter. But, like, if you want somebody, you got to treat somebody the way you want to be treated. It comes down to that golden rule. And so, yes, if you want to create the environment that you want to live in, if you like the company, you just hate your boss, like, then you got to take on some accountability in helping to develop them, or leave the organization.
I'm flashing back to a situation years ago where I was aspiring to get promoted into a role. And I was passed over on 2 separate occasions for 2 different people. One of the people that came into the organization, it was an outside hire coming in that we had an opportunity to interview, and a really nice guy, great conversationalist, very captivating personality, but he was not equipped to operate at the level that they were putting him in, and had just a massive ego. And I had to lead up to him and say, this is what the organization likes. This is what the C-suite likes to see. This is how they like to see it. This is how we need to do it. But he wanted to have his stamp on it. And so, I mean, it happened more times than I could count, where I would try to coach him, try to guide him. Here's how we need to do it. Here's how they like to see it. Well, but I'm going to do it this way. He would get shot down, and we would end up doing it the way that I suggested. And that was frustrating beyond belief. That was a point in my leadership journey where I was just beating my head against the wall, losing hundreds of hours of sleep. It was just pretty ridiculous how frustrated I was. And eventually, the rest of the organization saw that it wasn't a right fit. They ended up moving him out of the organization. And I think, that's just a function of time and patience. But what was so interesting, whenever we sat down and he gave me my annual performance review, which was all of 9 minutes long.
Sure.
Yeah. The first thing he opened with is, we have a great relationship. We get along great. Now, the reason I can't help but chuckle at that is because this guy was the bane of my existence. And he thought we had a great relationship.
Yeah.
I had to check my own ego to build a strong relationship with him so that I could get the tools necessary to support my team. I had to get along with him. I had to lead up. I had to manage him so that he could trust me, so that I could do the things that I needed to do. And a lot of people in middle management positions struggle with that because, again, they're not paying me to do that. He's my boss. I'm just going to check out. And it's a vicious cycle, and it's what drives away a lot of really good people.
Yeah, it does. It does. It also, I think you could ultimately replace all of these words with your boss, with your spouse, right? Or leave relationships as in your marriage and not just your job or whatever. And so I want to shift a little bit to the way of the wolf, right? In terms of there is no difference really in professional leadership and personal leadership and being the leader of yourself and the leader of your family. And from what I have gathered from the Way of the Wolf, can you tell us a little bit about your community there, which is a podcast and a lifestyle?
Yeah, I started the podcast exactly 4 years ago now, and for 2 main reasons. One was because I had started to develop this passion around leadership, and I wanted to share the lessons that I was learning with the world. But the other, really more important driver was spending a majority of my life as that extreme introvert. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to push myself to get out of my comfort zone because I was having a conversation with another friend and mentor of mine and said, I want to do this. And he said, start a YouTube channel. And immediately I was like, oh God, why would I do that? And
put myself out there?
Yeah, exactly. And I went home, spent a couple of days thinking on it, sleeping on it, and what I came to ultimately realize is that physiological response that I had, that was exactly why I needed to do it. And so I put myself out there, and I started recording podcast episodes and then putting them on YouTube. And look, the first year and a half, they were brutal. There's a reason they still only have 10 views to this day. But one thing that did help me is realizing that only 3 people are watching this. So if I mess up, I mess up. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But what happened is I went on this journey, and I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. I would have friends come on. I would have entrepreneurs come on. I'd have business executives come on. And we covered a wide array of topics: fitness and nutrition and leadership and business and family and faith, all these different things. And over time, I gradually started to narrow down more towards leadership and business and ultimately becoming the best version of ourselves. And you have to take a little bit of a holistic approach to this because if your personal life is in shambles, it's going to be difficult for you to bring your best self to your business, for your team.
Yep. We don't operate in silos.
We don't, as much as we would love to say we do, ultimately we don't.
Right.
Because it's more like a web or a mesh than like, here's this lane, this lane, this lane. So now focus primarily on leadership, business, becoming the best version of ourselves. So that's a lot of the content that we cover on the show. And the thing that I have come to realize over the past 4 years is that it's helped me become such an incredible conversationalist and walk into any room and have a conversation with any person. And, I learned this in the first year of having guests come on. I would have them come on, and some people, I would have my script of all my questions that I was going to ask, and then they would give me a yes/no response back, and I'm like, just waiting for more. Come on, you got to give me something more.
Right.
Whereas other people just wouldn't shut up. They would just ramble for 10 minutes, almost like I am now. and so learning how to kind of command and drive the conversation in the way that you want to share ultimately the lessons, that is one of the most powerful skills that I have learned through this process.
Okay. And what is, aside from that's the systematic side of what Way of the Wolf is, but what is the community? What is that? For a little bit, I mean, at least I was probably one of the three who's watched some of your earlier videos but it seemed to me like you were looking to build like a men's community of support and helping them to find their way, the Way of the Wolf.
Yep.
So where does that come from? What is the Way of the Wolf to you?
I've come to appreciate and admire wolves. And, there's all the terminology around the alpha and the pack and stuff like that. But ultimately, if you start looking at the behaviors and mannerisms of wolves, yes, there's usually a leader, they, call it the alpha of the pack, that will fight to the death to protect the pack or the team. Mm-hmm. And I view that as a crucial element of leadership. They are powerful, they're beautiful, they take care of their pack, their family, their people. And, I think it's important for men to start to espouse those philosophies, because I do believe that in society today, masculinity is starting to get a little bit of a negative connotation to it, which I don't really care for, because masculine values and feminine values and traits, it's not one is better than the other. They're complementary of one another. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, there are these drivers to demonize masculinity. And yes, there's extremes on the spectrum for sure. But, it's very challenging for men these days to kind of hold and manage their frame and espouse those masculine values and virtues. And there's not really a safe place for them to do that without fear of being canceled. And so, yes, we talk about this stuff a little bit on the podcast, and I've had countless men come to me like, hey, when are we going to get together? When are we going to go do some things? And I'm starting to build this community where guys can come together, not just to hang around the bonfire and drink, but let's have some time where we get together. Let's talk about the challenges that we're facing. Let's put a plan in action so that we can then hold each other accountable. Let's lift each other up. And yes, it's okay to espouse masculine values and virtues. That's a good thing.
Right.
So creating an environment where men can actually be men and then hold each other accountable. Like, hey, you said you were going to do this.
Right.
What happened?
Right.
And accountability carries over from leadership in business to leadership in our personal lives, to leading our friends, to leading our family. Accountability doesn't involve having comfortable conversations. Like, you have to get comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. And so this is something that I haven't really publicly spoken about a lot, but it is near and dear to my heart, and trying to figure out a mechanism beyond just a YouTube channel to be able to bring people together. And so that's something I'm going to be focusing on a bit more in the future as well.
Good. I'm hopeful. I'm glad that you talked about it, because I see you as a person who can do that for the community, for the male community, right? I being on the opposite side of it, there is a need for it. There is a huge need for men to find a place. And what accountability looks like isn't, hey, did you go to the gym? You said you were going to do that 3 times this week. It's, hey, I heard the way you spoke to your wife the other day. I'm not really sure that I'm comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. That's not my value of how I want to right? Be in a relationship with somebody. Like, I think that is that full spectrum of accountability. When you see something happening outside of your core values, that you can call somebody to say, that's not what you said you were.
Mm-hmm.
And there is not enough of that going on. And I don't care if you're a man or a woman, but there's not enough of that going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making us, I don't know, really quite frankly, I don't know. I'm getting sick about it.
Yeah, it's frustrating because, again, having those difficult conversations is difficult.
It is difficult.
It's not easy to deliver a message and hold somebody accountable in a way that's not going to piss them off and get them all torqued up, right? So you have to have...
Sorry, but fun fact, it's not you can't control that, how they respond.
No, you can't control how they respond, but you can control how you deliver
Absolutely.
the message. Like,
Sure.
I have a good friend of mine. He's an entrepreneur, business owner, and like he does some things phenomenally well. Like, I am envious of how well he does certain things. Other things that he does in terms of running his business, I just cringe. But I also know how do I say this? I have to deliver messages in a certain way so that he doesn't get torqued up.
Right.
I know that about him. He and I have a mutual respect and trust for one another. And so I know how to deliver messages to him in a way to encourage him to provoke thought instead of getting him torqued up and twisted off.
Right. And this is 100% a skill that you have to learn and craft and practice. And it's not going to go right every single time. My mom, she's a retired attorney, but it doesn't matter if it's in business or your personal life or having tough conversations. There's the closing argument you plan to give. There's the closing argument you gave. And then there's the closing argument you wish you would have gave.
Yeah.
Then that's tough conversations across the board. And you just got to keep doing them because you walk away from every single one of them going, I wish I would have, and ruminating and trying to and you learn from, well, I guess I won't say that next time. Right.
It's a matter of getting the reps in.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if people have that uncomfortable conversation and it blows up the friendship for a while, people are like, oh God, I'm never going to do that again. Well, maybe you just approach it in a different way. And, fear is a very real thing that everyone in the world struggles with. But the biggest lesson that I have learned over the past 5 years of doing this stuff full time, fear is a mile wide, but it's only an inch deep.
Yeah.
And yes, you're going to step off and you're going to, step into a deeper portion of the puddle. Okay, let's not go over there, but let's do this. Let's do this. You just have to keep moving forward. And the more reps you get in, you add to your database. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, that works. Let me do more of that. Yeah. And people they become paralyzed by fear because of, oh, I stepped in all these wrong potholes. Well, I'm never going to step anywhere ever again. And, well, that's not going to get you anywhere in life.
Right. That's an option. I was just telling my 10-year-old, I'm like, all of these things I'm trying to bestow down to my 10 and 6-year-old. And I'm like, if I would have learned this earlier, life would be a lot easier. Right. But that he had said something about being a failure or failing at something. And I was like, hey, buddy. And he's a science engineer type mind. I'm like, did you know that failure is actually a science experiment? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, all failing at something is teaching you what not to do. So you can do the same thing again, but in a different way, and you might get a different result. And I don't know, it just kind of clicked for his little engineer mind to go, oh, it's not as bad. It's not as traumatic as feeling like a failure. It's just, I learned something that I can try, that I don't need to do that again and try something different. And I was very excited that we could reframe failure for a 10-year-old, because I think those small things can change the world.
I think that reframing that you did is such a beautiful example of what more people need to realize and learn. Because I have come to realize ultimately that failure and success are actually on the same path. They're just different exits.
There you go. So what is 2025 look like for Sean Barnes and the Way of the Wolf and the WSS? What are you focused on right now?
Continuing to push leadership, coaching, becoming the best version of ourselves. And, we've had WSS full-time for about 1.5 years, the podcast for 4 years. And as we come to kind of more formalize our coaching offers, I won't talk on the consulting side right now, but on the coaching side, what I've come to realize is it is extremely important for us to remove barriers to entry and eliminate excuses. And so we have a number of different offerings that we're pushing on the coaching side of things. You can do one-on-one executive coaching with me. We do one-day or half-day workshops, and we're launching the Wolf Leadership Series, which is a bi-weekly interactive webinar type series, which is a low subscription point of $39 a month. You get every other week, I'll be talking about specific leadership topics, and then I open up the call to Q&A. And then we have the YouTube channel, which is free. And so there's a lot of different price points for whatever level you are at in your career, in life. And ultimately, I never want price to be a barrier to entry to becoming the best version of ourselves. So we're kind of crafting these different packages and pushing that and sharing as much of that as possible. Going to keep doubling down on content. Last year, we had 1.6 million impressions. I've told my team I want to double that next for 2025, which is going to be a tall order. Okay. But it's something that we're really pushing as much as we possibly can. And, increasing your reach, there's a price to pay for it in terms of the amount of time allocation I spend, my people on my team spend, our editors spend. Like, there's dollars, there's time to increase your reach, to get as many people as possible to be aware of what you do. And as a second-year entrepreneur, you have to balance that, because cash flow is obviously an important dynamic that you can't ignore. But I am set on changing the world through leadership, and it's just going to be a function of time.
Okay. Yeah, because you're only one person. That's, I think, one of the key things that most leaders don't understand or know how to do is delegate and duplicating themselves, right? I mean, because you're only one person. There's only one Sean Barnes.
There is. But one of the things that I've shared with my team is extremely important. Right now, I'm the guy in front of the camera. Yeah. Right now, I'm the face of the Wolf in WSS. That is not what I want long term. I want a team of people, of leaders that are in front of the camera, that are building and lifting others up. And again, that's going to be a function of time, because as I build and invest in the people on my team today, and then as we continue to grow and bring more leaders in, some of them have no desire to be in front of the camera. They want to be behind the camera, and that's fine. But I want to build a team of people so that it's not just Sean Barnes, the way of the Wolf, that it's going to be Sean and Mary and Crystal and Jason and Sally and all the people, and they're going to have different roles in this, which is part of building a team. But that's ultimately my long-term vision. Is it's not going to be the Sean Barnes show. It's going to be this team of leaders that we're building and giving them opportunities for upward mobility. And everybody has those, right? Like, if you look at Steve Bartlett or Mel Robbins or any of them, they've all got a team, but they are the face. And or Simon Sinek, right? I've actually called Simon Sinek's office and tried to book him for something, and they're like, you can have some of these others at this price point, or you can have Simon for this price point. Yeah. And I'm like, right, yeah. So something to that sort of format, if you will. Exactly.
Gotcha. And because this isn't live and I can edit it, I want to jump back real fast to self-reflection in terms of, what does it take? Or you didn't start just questioning, I don't know, maybe you did. At what point did you actually come to a place where you go, oh, this is a me problem? Or how can I contribute? Or how did I contribute? Or turning the mirror towards yourself. When was that moment for you? Or what does that look like?
I spent the vast majority of my professional career pointing the finger. My boss is an idiot. This guy Steve's an idiot. Everybody else was the problem. And because I was such a high-performing individual contributor in the IT arena, I was still able to kind of progress up the leadership ranks in the companies that I was working for. The turning point for me really was when I had the opportunity to start leading human resources. And I realized at that point that while I had still accomplished great things, it was, what can Sean accomplish? What can Sean accomplish? Everybody else is the problem. And my entire world and perspective shifted into the people on my team, because I can't say it was like one moment. It was a series of moments over that first year where I came to realize that everything's on my shoulders, because I stepped in, I started leading this HR team of like 20 people, and I knew that if I failed, I failed. And that was a tough pill to swallow. And I had to understand, like, I have to invest in building Jason up, and Sharon and Sally and Chris. Like, if I help all of them be successful, then ultimately we will all be successful together. And it was a gradual turning of my perspective and taking ownership and accountability. And Jocko Willink talks about, extreme ownership. Phenomenal book, by the way.
Yeah.
And that was around the time that I discovered Jocko and Echelon Front, and I went to a muster event. And so I think all of those things were kind of the catalyst of finding Jocko, finding this opportunity to lead human resources. So those were the catalyst, but I had to walk the path. I had to put in the effort. And it was this flywheel effect. Like, I started to notice a positive effect in my life because of the efforts that I was putting into other people. And yes, I was still surrounded by idiots, but what I discovered is if I take ownership and I still lead by example, that they would start to come along with me. And the more I lead by example, the more I inspire and influence others, the more leaders I'm able to build and develop. And again, it was this flywheel effect, tons of energy on the front end, but I encourage people to find that catalyst, whether it's me, whether it's Jocko, whether it's Gary Vaynerchuk, or whoever it is. Latch on to that person, take ownership of what's going on in your life, because you are the only one that is in control. You are the only one that can change your life.
So I always like to, especially from the coaching perspective, because I think this industry in general, that there's already a barrier to entry. You talked about that in terms of financial barrier, but personal barrier being, I failed, right? I can't do this by myself. I'm on a mission to dispel that is not the truth, right? So I want you to describe what is either a CEO or middle management person experiencing in their daily life that makes them have, like, if they heard this, they would go, and then to what they are currently experiencing, and then if they were to work with you, what they would be experiencing after that. And I don't mean KPIs. Mm-hmm. I mean the feeling of their life, their existence.
This takes some deep reflection and asking yourself, are you happy with the life that you are living? And when you are in a dark place, that is a very difficult conversation to have, because you ultimately have to turn the mirror on yourself and say, I am exactly where I am as a result of the decisions that I have made in my life. Do I want to continue down this path, or do I want to change something? If you decide to change something, it's going to come at a cost. It's going to cost you your old life. And most people are not willing to give that up. And the only time they do is if the cost of staying the same is less than the cost of change, is more than the cost of change. Right. Man, that would have been a good clip. I just butchered that.
No. You want to try it again?
No.
All right. And I just, having gone through having to give up my old life to get my new life, and it is a painful process, but it's not as bad as staying. And I'm always fascinated by those that would, I am legitimately currently fascinated that you would rather live in that dark, dark place than do this. Is this work easy? Not really, not at all. And is it fun? Not even close. But are the rewards worth it? You better freaking believe it. So I'm always fascinated. And I think it's always interesting for people like us on the other side that are like, hey, come on, this side's so much brighter and it's so much better, and you should come do this. And people just still would rather be in the darkness.
Because that's easy.
Is it though? Is it waking up and looking at yourself in the mirror and hating what you see and living every day, every minute of every day, hating your existence? That's easier than doing this work.
Well, the fear of change is very real.
For sure.
None of us are immune to that. And it's only once we finally reach that tipping point and start taking steps in the right direction, and we make it to the other side of that mountain that we were dreading, that we're able to see the sun, see the light and the excitement and everything that we were missing. And we look back and think, oh, I wish I would have done this sooner.
Yeah.
But for those that are on the other side of the mountain, that's a daunting task. And so what you are doing in terms of sharing your story, sharing all of the adversity that you've gone through, the ups and downs, and you've been through a lot in your life, sharing that stuff publicly, even if you don't have a ton of views or followers right now, you're sharing your journey and you're inspiring and influencing others. And there are people, even if there's a handful of them, that are watching your story and they're waiting. And many of them probably have this oh, this is a phase. Oh, she's going to. When you keep going on a long enough time horizon, people are going to start to shift their, well, maybe I can too. She has put herself through just the ringer over and over. And look at her. Look at her. This incredible version of Emily that just keeps coming out day after day. And like it's inspiring beyond belief to see all of the things that you are doing. So just keep doing that, and you are going to start to have this ripple effect and positively impact more and more people's lives. And eventually, there's somebody who's watching you now who is going to do something similar, and then they are going to inspire even more people. And that is how we change the world.
That is. And that's why my number one question is always, you only get to impact one person. That's it. That's the shot you get. And what are we going to say to them? So for you, yours was that. I'm trying to remember.
Oh man, we're gonna.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. No, ultimately, I think the biggest thing that I can share, and you came and supported me with my speech that I gave at Inspired Leaders, which was that was a turning point for me, sharing my why I'm so driven, why I have this fire inside of me, and I've been holding on to it for over 40 years. And so it was tough for me to deliver. I mean, you saw.
Yeah.
And, the thing that was so interesting about it is I knew that speech was going to take a lot out of me. What I didn't anticipate is spending over an hour afterwards, people coming up to me, hugging me, tearing up, crying. One lady even said this is exactly what she needed to see or hear, and she's going to go quit her job and go start her own thing. And I was like, no, that was not the intent of the speech. But we all have adversity and challenges that we're facing in life. And if we can do one thing, if we can inspire and influence one person, that's all it takes for that flywheel to start to take hold and to start to permeate through and lift others up.
That's the deal. That's the job every day. And I think that when you can finally find that, you get to wake up going, this is what I was put on this planet to do.
And one more thing that I'm going to add to that. It was such a significant realization event for me because first year of entrepreneurship, brutal. Like it crushed me. Yes, I was choking up on stage as a result of what I was talking about, but also as a result of a year of stress and pressure of trying to get new customers, trying to support people on my team, making sure we had enough revenue to make payroll, all of these things. The amount of pressure that you endure when you are chasing your purpose, trying to put your dent in the universe, it's very easy for us to slip into this mindset of, is this even worth it?
Yeah.
Am I having the impact that I think I'm having or that I want to have?
Yeah.
And seeing all of those people there, for them to have a record turnout for their event, it was a beautiful reminder of the fact that I am making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
I am moving the needle. I just need to keep moving forward.
I mean, I think that is huge. You need that, and you're right. The very first year is brutal. It is not for the faint of heart. So before you go quitting your job, please know that it does take a lot out of you. And then when you do finally get those, you're reminding me of certain moments, me getting out and doing this full time, and my previous life with BNI and all that, like that I would meet people at a networking event I haven't seen in 6 years, and they're like, oh my gosh, you were amazing. We loved having you. And like, I remember getting back in my car and being like, holy shit, I did make a difference. I was making the impact I thought I was making. I was, and you need those things.
You do. And it's those little moments that give you that extra little spark to keep going. And sometimes those moments don't show up for months at a time.
Right.
But when they do, when you get your first Google review that's 5 stars, you're like, oh, thank God.
Right.
Which is so crazy. You start a business, you have all these friends, all these people that you've supported their businesses over the years. Hey, could you spend 30 seconds to write me a Google review?
Crickets.
Yeah, crickets chirping.
Yeah.
You're like, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars with your business, and you can't give me a review for 30 seconds. Like, in any event, those are the types of things that entrepreneurs struggle with.
Yeah.
It is a relentless beat down every single day. But then you have those moments where somebody shares how much you impacted their life.
Yeah.
And it makes it all worthwhile.
100%. And you're right. They don't come very often, but they do feel you for a long time, I think. Just knowing some sort of external confirmation that you're on the right path and you are accomplishing the thing that you wanted to accomplish goes a very long way. Please write reviews for Sean and myself. Not that we need external validation, but it doesn't hurt. It helps a lot. All right. Any last parting thoughts before we wrap up? Anything we didn't cover?
I think we covered a lot of really great topics, and I have to commend you for starting this up, for coming in, working like in a studio. I'm honestly a bit envious because my first 2 years of a podcast were a bit of a mess, not in a studio. And so commend you on the things that you're doing, on the things that you're building up. Just keep putting that positive energy out into the world, and you're going to change the world.
Thank you, Sean. You as well. I genuinely mean that. I know that the Way of the Wolf community, I know that there's a need for that. There needs to be a safe space, and that we absolutely need you in middle management and helping corporations change the culture of how we do business, because it's the rat race of the turning door and letting people just walk out into the world without any of these skills, that bleed into our personal life. It's a beat down, and you can help them. So would really love for anybody who wants to work with Sean, please check our show notes, and we'll have his links down there. And thank you so much for making the impact that you do. Appreciate you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to join you.
You bet. All right, guys, thanks so much for being here. We will see you next week. Follow us on all the socials, including TikTok, since it's back. And we will see you next week. Find your Watch Me moment this week. We'd love to hear about it. Have a great day.